How's it going, guys? Welcome to TheBlueShifting and welcome to the first part of Muv-Luv Total Eclipse. Now, if I understand correctly, this takes place in the alternative universe. So, by the way, if you're here first time, welcome. Welcome to the channel. I cover lots of story-based content, visual novels primarily, but I've also started to, because of the great support from wonderful patrons, I've been able to spend some time dabbling in other story-rich like JRPGs and games such as that, games that take more time and gameplay and more like grinding, but like I have the ability to play them and kind of cut them down. So plenty of great content to check out. I do 5 videos a week. Hope to keep you around. But if you're here and you're part of the long daisy chain of Muv-Luv that we've had as like a tradition on this channel on Mondays, like pretty much since the early days of the channel, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. We just wrapped the day after. Now there's more story to come from that, but we haven't had it published yet. Now, this is something that's interesting because it's been out for a while, but it only just got released in a like localized format, just like last year, I believe. So this is my first time to really be able to experience it, except for the fact that there's an anime. I never watched the anime in its entirety because I had a feeling I'd be able to play this game someday, but it was highly recommended to me a long time ago to watch the first couple episodes just to get a feel for this universe, and I actually kind of agree with that. If you're not really sure about this stuff, go look up the anime. I think it's on Crunchyroll still, and I'm sure there's other places you can get it. Watch the first 2 episodes of Total Eclipse just because it sets the stage really well. You can also kind of do the same thing with, I think, the first episode of Muv-Luv Alternative, which just recently came out, because that first introduction was really powerful too. But yeah, it just kind of sets the stage really well for this world where aliens came and invaded and are wiping out humanity slowly, piecemeal-wise. Now, this is, of course, taking place in the alternative universe, which means this is the timeline that we are most familiar with. So, for what that means, it just means that we're likely going to be seeing references to, operations, activities, and characters that we are very, very, familiar with and have seen the stories of. But this apparently takes place with a class of completely different characters. We've seen little bits and pieces in the day after that reference some of the events that apparently happened in here, or at least programs. But again, I know only surface level stuff. So mostly this is a blind playthrough, other than the fact that I'm very familiar with the world of Muv-Luv and the storyline branching narratives that are going on. Even though there's so much content I still have yet to digest just because it's not available officially, there's still a lot that I've been able to go through. So I'm really grateful for that. Anyway, yeah, so, sorry for the rambling, but it's the preamble for a series like this. Now, of course, because the first episodes are usually set up in character introduction, it's probably going to start off a little slow, but hopefully you'll still stick around with me for this part of the storyline. If you've played this before, I'm sure you'll know kind of what's coming up, and you can just kind of hear my thoughts about the process. If this is completely new to you, well, frankly, you should probably make sure you've read Muv-Luv Extra, Unlimited, and Alternative, which are the core, backbone, and probably, the real masterpiece of this universe. In fact, those core games are so amazing that they've spawned dozens and dozens and dozens of parallel, explorative, world-building side stories like Total Eclipse that don't really have much but a tangential, relationship to the core story. But that core world-building was so powerful that these games and these stories stand on their own very effectively. So yeah, if this is a whole new universe to you, welcome. This is a new channel, a new time coming to the channel. Welcome as well. If you like this kind of content, you're gonna find a lot more like it. I'm not gonna be screaming and making a big ho-ha about stuff. It's mostly about me being genuine and really just embellishing the story and just really getting into it. I sink my teeth into characters, into their development, into the world building. And I also get excited about science and physics and theoretical stuff. I'm just gonna kind of geek out every time I can, and I just kind of want to take you on this journey where I share my input and my thoughts about stuff, and it's really fun. So hopefully it's something that you find interesting and maybe different from your typical experience watching gaming on this channel. Anyway, enough about that. That's a lot of rambling that's gone on. I hope you guys are excited. Guys and gals are excited just like I am, and let's just get into it. So I'm going to deviate. You won't see this part, but I'm going to go into the options to make sure that the sounds are kind of balanced in a way to kind of try and make it so that the audio is okay. I have to kind of guess, though, because I go into this blind. So this first episode, I could see the audio being a lot more out of place compared to what it should be in the future, because then I'll have a chance to play with it. But we'll get right to that, and we'll get started in just a moment. All right, now let's jump right in and see how I think about all this. All right, so starting off with the hive already. God, every time I see these things, it's just ugh. So what is this? It's really quiet. What are they, like, who's going into here? Or is this a simulation? Oh no, this is an infiltration. But that's in a big stab. Wow. This site remains as mysterious as the day I first laid eyes on it. There's no reason why a pale light flickering amid the darkness should tug on the heartstrings of a Japanese people, yet it does. From time immemorial, gazing upon the light that has left the heart and split our people flush with feelings of love, respect, and admiration. What a shame it is these days we can only witness bioluminescence of this magnitude within the abominable strongholds of our enemy. The hive. A symbol of despair and slaughter, a structure of the whole of mankind should hate. I'm not the woman I was in the past. This shouldn't be a distraction anymore. Yet still, I find myself lost in thought, my heart beset with hesitation and anxiety to the core. She's very eloquent. Like, we've been in the mind of many characters throughout the series, but it's interesting how I believe it mostly stems from the idea that, like, they have different writers that are brought on. Like, obviously they consult and work with the core writers and the core, like, main writer of this series, but a lot of these branch offs are written by different people, and thus you get these really, like, unique flavors of the way the characters think when we see from their perspective, and it's really cool to see that. And so this is one where it's like, it feels like the way she thinks and approaches things is very different from like the character I was really used to recently, which is Hibiki.
White Fang 0より White Fang 1 3時方向距離9000 NNE482 シャフトから F 層中域へ進行せよ。
Like, this makes me think this is a simulation just because infiltrating a stab of a hive, like, this seems like it looks like it's going really well. And every time I've seen an operation where go through a beta hive, it does not go well.
White Fang 1了解。中隊前期に次ぐフォーメーションウェッジ1および速度を維持。このまま F レイヤー中域に突入する。
了解。
There we go, into the heart. Those look like the older Shinuri.
ここまで来ればメインシャフトは目と鼻の先。あとは一気に下って。
You see, how are they this close but haven't, like, taken severe damage yet? Maybe they have, but it just doesn't feel like they have.
ゲート突入から75分で F 層域。ベータ軍の回避順調ですね。注意。例の最新データは完璧です。
Alright, how do I hide? Yeah, okay, look at this gun that she's holding right here. It has, like, a drum on the back. Oh, nope, never mind. It could have used. So it looked like it had a drum on the back, but also, like, a canister on the bottom, which almost makes me think and reminisce of, like, a flamethrower type of deal. It's probably not. It's probably just an ammo drum and, like, a pressurization of some kind, maybe to do kind of an air and flame propellant mix to be able to fire the rounds. Again, there's a lot that's left to the imagination, and with big mechs, like, you're talking about physics that are really stretched to the limits of what we typically deal with. So it's like, I don't know, but it makes me think about, like, a flamethrower, which would be interesting because I don't know if I've seen. I think they mentioned stuff like close quarters, like specialized weaponry that they were, like, testing for hive infiltrations, and I could see a handheld, like, flamethrower being potentially useful, but again, the beta don't seem to feel pain. So the trouble with a flamethrower is that if it doesn't instantly destroy a beta you're fighting, it would probably just ignore it, which would mean that you would instead have beta on fire attacking you, which doesn't sound like a great, improvement on the situation. And keep in mind, of course, if you're new to this for whatever reason, beta are aliens that of various forms that have come and are just trying to sweep the world. They destroy everything in their path, they absorb all the resources, and do something with it. The humans don't know. We know now just because we've gotten to the end of Alternative, and we have a good overall picture, but again, at least for this first episode, I'm going to assume you might not know the whole series. But like I said, if you're going to continue watching this, which honestly, if you haven't experienced the core of Muv-Luv, please do that first. But I'm going to kind of be vague for this first episode, just in case I found somebody who's, really new to all this. Anyway, so, going forward in, boom.
順調すぎて怖いぐらいだ。
Now, see there, she's right. I agree with her 100%. If things are going this well and it were an actual beta hive, I would be terrified because they never go well.
いつもの心配性ですか？いえ、今回ばかりは私もこのまま F 層最深部まで到達できれば良いのですが。
Like I said, I'm guessing this is a simulation.
むしろここからが本番だ。未だ全工程の半分に過ぎない。
Look at those flight suits, though. They're definitely different. Like the yellow and they look a lot more embellished. They actually remind me of the Takamakazuchi royal guard outfits. But that's interesting because they're not in Takamakazuchi's. They look like they're in Shiranui's, but again, they look like a different form of them. So I don't know if this is just an older model or what.
はい。背部攻略は戦闘回避が大原則とはいえ、最深部に近づくほどルートの選択肢は狭まりますから。
Exactly. These things do not mess around, and they make mechs they just treat them like toys.
そうだ。だからこそ私たちの責任は重い。皇族の命運を追っているに等しい。
Right. So you guys are being a spearhead. Literally, look at that formation even. It looks like a spear.
F 層域に入れば、いよいよ高型兵装の使用許可が下ります。触れ込み通りの獲物であれば、私たちの心配も気憂に終わるでしょう。
Weapon testing. Okay, yeah. I'm starting to really think more and more that this is probably a simulation.
まったく。部下には聞かせられない会話だな。
では、これまでとしておきます。
雨宮め、いらぬ気遣いを。いや、部下に見透かされる私の問題か。
Okay. Not only does the new device require a minimum of one entire flight to operate, but carrying it severely hinders the TSS functionality on the field. I'd love to meet the pilot who can stay positive lugging this thing on their back. Alright, so, I have a guess of what this is, obviously, but I'll reserve my guesses just because, again, the day after probably spoiled this reveal for me. Even so. Oh, that looked lovely. I will do it and do so gladly, for it is my path and my duty, among other reasons. Whatever the case, we're entering the crucial stage of the operation. I'm clearly causing my subordinates to worry about me.
コマンドポストよりホワイトファン1。まもなく F 層域に突入。警戒を密にせよ。
I would argue that if you haven't seen hostilities, it's because they've done something to mitigate the initial problems, or the beta have been known to set up ambushes when it comes to defending their own turf. They're pretty straightforward in general. They don't have tactics per se. It's usually overwhelm and overcome. But when it comes to defending their hives, they do tend to be a bit more clever, consolidating resources and striking en masse rather than trickling through. It seems like they understand that it's far better to ambush and to lay traps.
ホワイトファング1了解。
Alright, here we go.
ホワイトファング0より中隊各機。11時方向。距離6000に大規模ベータ軍。警戒せよ。
Alright, so here they come.
ホワイトファング2。12時方向へ試行索敵1回。
ホワイトファング2了解。
気持ちは熱くなってもいい。だが、心は常に冷たく保てよ。
Lieutenant Colonel Yuya. Yuya, that sounds familiar. That name... Yuya. Why do I know that? Yuya. Yuya.
こちらホワイトファング2、音信センサーに感あり。敵個体数測定限界を超えています。接敵回避不能。
Alright, well, that's great.
ホワイトファング1よりコマンドポストエンゲージオフェンシブ。
コマンドポスト了解。必要と認めるあらゆる手段を許可する。
AKA, pull off the big gun.
ホワイトファング1より各機直ちに跳躍中止。ストーンヴァンガード前へ。フォーメーションアローヘッド
Alright, so now they're taking up fighting stances. Come
2。
on.
ショットガン3で行くぞ。第1撃着弾と同時に第1小隊は1500まで進出し攻撃。第2第3小隊はそれぞれ距離100を保ちこれを支援。
Alright, so they have 3 flights at least working together. I'm guessing they have 4 though, because they're gonna have the 4th flight like watching their like rear guard.
了解。
Alright. Here they come. Here they come. And they should be crawling over everything.
前期兵器使用自由。攻撃開始。
ホワイトファング11フォックス1。
Fox 1, that's usually for missile launches. Do they have long range like bombardment weapons? Here we go.
第1小隊突撃。第2第3小隊前進しつつ支援砲撃開始。
Maybe they're anti-laser clouds? That would be interesting to take inside. Look at them come! Oh my gosh, there they are! Oh, this tunnel's really big. Grapplers. The red ones are the size of, like, large cars. The white ones are the size of freaking tanks, if not, like, dwarfing tanks. Like, the scale is hard to grasp until you see them, like, up close.
主力ベータ軍が左右に展開。
Right.
第2第3小隊頭を押さえろ。包囲させるな。
Problem is they can climb the walls. You gotta watch your ceilings too, which is something you normally don't have to worry about in the combat.
ホワイトファング0より中隊各機予断規模超の移動震源探知。12時方向距離約3000。 H12 ホールから H227 ドリフトへ移動中。
Alright, so stabs are passages that lead like from the surface towards the core. Halls are the large passages like we're in right now, which can accommodate like all troop movement in the hive. And then drifts are smaller passages that work like a spider web throughout like everything. And even then, that's like the best thing we can guess because of topographical and sonar-based like mapping. There's still many other passages that don't get seen or just are actively dug during combat. So you can't trust the walls.
波形称号デストロイヤー級です。
Here come destroyer classes, heavily armored, charging straight through. Tough to kill if you're not behind them.
ホワイト
Also,
ファング1
these
よ
ones
り
are
中隊各機
huge.
例のおもちゃを使う。砲撃戦準備。
Like 2 or 3 stories tall.
了解。
フォーメーションクロス1展開しつつ攻撃。車線を確保しろ。
Alright, so this is the test fire of the new weapon.
ブラストガード各機球団コンテナ接続急げ。
Okay, so does this thing take other TSFs to fire, to like set up? So it's like a TSF, which is the mech. So it's like a TSF, like, super gun. Interesting. That's not the impression I got when I saw it in action last time. Oh, jeez, look at him
全
go.
緊急型電磁投射砲ステータスチェック。
Okay. So it is the railgun. We've seen this thing in action before a bit, but I'm guessing we're going to get a much better picture of it. So I'm guessing that's what the thing had with like the canister and the round on the top. Perhaps these are... Doesn't sound like... Maybe they're just battery packs for the rail itself. Because a railgun, remember, is typically... It fires a slug using typically electromagnetic force. Which is essentially superconductors in a line that take a shell and fire it at supersonic speeds. Like, the barrel has to be pretty long compared to other guns, but because it doesn't have to rely on fuel, it can fire something essentially as fast as you need it to, assuming you have the power for it. I imagine that's going to be its biggest issue, is like just the energy requirements.
ステータスチェック異常なし
投射砲構え
Rail guns, like plural?
投射砲構え
There we go.
球団コンテナ接続完了接続確認
Okay, so they got multiple. Oh my gosh.
敵戦闘線を切りました
異常なし
抑えきれません
ホワイトファング3準備はいいな
これ以上差し込まれたら軌道回避が間に合わなくなります
Here we go. See this baby in action.
ストームヴァンガードの名にかけて何としてでも持たせろ
超電導モーター起動
Superconductor.
超電導モーター起動
Railguns are
球団
pretty
装
cool.
置始動
Oh, is it a rapid fire railgun? That's really interesting. Typically not something we see, but absolutely makes more sense than like a railgun. You mostly right now is a like conceptual weapon. It's just too bulky to be able to use. But if you had a field deployable one, it would make sense to have one that could reload and fire rapidly. So you're talking about a mech-sized Gatling gun that can fire rounds the size of like, I don't know, motorcycle, between motorcycle and SU and like you know, Toyota Camry, somewhere along that size, but solid slugs of like just like, I don't know, lead or titanium or whatever. And then you fire it out, but then you have a rapid fire setting on that thing where it can fire multiple shots in quick succession. Like, you'd have, if you have a railgun primed properly, because it can work at the speed of near light speed, you could potentially have a fire rate far exceeding any like machine gun we currently have access to. You could have these rounds tripping over themselves and getting out of this bullet. So you could, it would almost be like, instead of like boom, 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 you know, which is like a slowed down version of like a machine gun. It's like bang, 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 where each one's like a firing pin, firing explosion. You could have the bullets like firing out of the barrel, and this next bullet could be in the slot and firing whilst the first one hasn't even left yet. So instead of imagining like a spray of bullets, it's almost like a stream where it's like the bullets could be nearly like not touching per se, but like I said, you could have multiple shots firing out of the barrel before the first shot has left.
球団装置始動
車線に遊軍機なしトリガーセーフティー解除
トリガーセーフティー解除
There
敵
we
戦
go.
闘距離400
Oh, look at that thing. Instant death.
これは
Yeah, holy crap.
デストロイヤー級の装甲角がまるで粘土細工の
Now,
ように
keep in mind, so these are mechs. These are standing like 3, 4, 5 meters tall. They fire bullets that are just humongous slags of metal in and of themselves. Destroyer class shrug them off like they're nothing. You fire missiles at Destroyer class, it shrugs them off like it's nothing. You have to like hit them from like the rear where they're not armored, or hit them with like massive shells from like not orbital bombardment, though that would be effective. I'm thinking more of like sea assault from like massive cannons on like battleships and such. This thing is just putting them all to shame. Dude, that's awesome.
敵戦闘集団消滅スダン規模の敵視力無力化
Holy crap.
信じられない
It's like, yes, if we could just have one of these with every squad, we could turn the tide of the entire war.
姿勢緊急型電磁投射砲恐るべき威力見とれている場合ではないぞ第一第二小隊は戦線を押し上げろ電気兵器使用自由
了解
Careful. Really be careful. I can definitely see that like the animation style has gotten a lot better since like this came out. I've gotten spoiled recently with the later or, like more recent publications, but this is still great.
ホワイトファング7 32デストロイヤー級5うわー
Uh-oh. Oh, see, that you can't trust the walls.
このままでは第一小隊が孤立する。
You never trust the walls at a beta hive. They're liquid at best.
第一小隊交代。第二、第三小隊は交代を援護。ホワイト了解。
Here they come through the walls and the ceiling and
早く
everywhere.
下がれ。上に飲み込まれたら終わりだぞ。
Oh no! Oh no!
このままじゃ。うわー
That's the thing. Like they look like they're so small and helpless, but to get there, they can rip these things apart.
ホワイトファングセブン、待ってろ、今。うわー、食われる、食われる。隊長、このような混戦では味方5社が。
Is retreat an option?
分かっている。スリッパードリフトを狙って後続を潰すんだ。
Uh-oh. What's the front?
ものでは取り回しが。ホワイトファング11、12カバーだ。砲撃機を援護しろ。ところに入れさせるな。
They've identified the threat. Oh boy. Uh-oh.
方針加熱。バカな。冷却装置が損傷したのか。
Oh, that could be another thing what the big line was. Like, it almost might not, like, just be an ammo feeder. It also might be a coolant system. Gun jam.
やってるか。
Alright. Now is the time to drop the gun and run. It is a simulation. Mission failure.
ホワイトファング1、胸部コクピットブロックに致命的損害。戦闘継続不能と判定。
Dang. Think about that. Think about that. They had that weapon. And things went from, oh, wow, we're melting all of them, to, we're all dead. That's the force of, like, sheer numbers. And again, the walls being freaking not walls.
仮想戦闘プログラム、ボールク19終了。これより感染モードに切り替えます。
Yeah. That sucks. A Prison Called Youth, episode 0-1. Yeah, okay, hey Yui. So, I've already had comments screaming that this is their favorite waifu character, so I'm sure we're gonna get to know her really well. She's pretty, I'll give her that. She also looks pretty
高村
pissed.
注意。
雨宮。
肝心な時に作動不良ですか。新型はこれだから。
The other thing too, like, if they're simulating, like, doesn't it make sense for them to simulate possible problems? So yeah, maybe in the simulator nothing technically happened that would have caused an overheat, but like, that's the whole point. Like, it's like when NASA was sending people to the moon for the Apollo missions, they would drill them over and over and over and over again. Like, they spent thousands of hours literally doing the exact same thing all the time, every day. But then, occasionally, NASA would just throw a random conglomeration of issues at them to test them in the simulator to see if they could figure out the issue and solve it. In fact, probably the only reason the Apollo 13 astronauts survived was because of how well trained they were for pretty much whatever could go wrong. So when something happened that they genuinely never anticipated, which is an oxygen tank exploding, they were able to compensate and get themselves back home, which is insane if you think about it. So yeah, like, if it's a simulation and I were running a programming of the simulation, I would absolutely throw in a random thing like, oh yeah, so combat's getting a little scary, gun suddenly stops working. Now what do? Well, it looks like you die, so maybe we should address that and figure out a new way to approach these types of situations.
違う。グラップラー級の破片で冷却装置をやられたんだ。
なるほど。ということは走行強度に難ありといったところですね。
I mean, maybe not yet.
いや、あそこまで敵の肉薄を許してしまえば、強度以前の問題だ。
You might be argued to say Yui might be being too hard on herself, but she's absolutely right, honestly.
だとすれば、 戦術機での運用はやはり難がありますね。どう見てもあれは拠点防衛向きですし。
No, it's an Amemiya. I would say, whilst you're right in its current form, that might be more like sustainable. Like we're like the beta and the way they're invading and how much of the planet they've covered. Like it'll probably talk about this in like an overview in the near future. But just keep in mind that like Eurasia gone. It's been overrun with beta, and the beta are constantly pushing outward, threatening to take over Africa, the British Isles. The American continents have been spared up till now, but it's looking grim. Mostly a matter of time kind of a thing. And Japan's barely holding out. It's like one of the only fronts that's like Japan and the British Isles are like the only fronts that are currently engaging and holding ground in any meaningful way. So yeah, we need a weapon like this or else things are just gonna keep getting worse.
戦果と威力だけを見れば、上が背部攻略に持ち出したくなる気持ちもわかりますけれど。あとはレポートに書きましょう。走行強度をどうするかはメーカーの領分ですし。
Okay, so it's still in development? That's good. That means there's a lot of room for improvement.
そうだな。私のログも共有しておく。
は。それにしても最後の抜刀、注意の礼式なら間に合っていたでしょうに。
Okay. So yeah, so she does pilot Takuma Kazuchi. No, you might not apparently, but like I said, like their outfits do resemble Royal Guard, but it's interesting because they're yellow, which is not a color I've seen up till now. We've seen red, we've seen blue, we've seen black, and then purple, obviously. So yellow, different color.
言うな。対応できなかったのは私だ。機体のせいにするほど落ちてはいない。
Again? Damn, she is cute though. Holy cow.
ですが、知らぬい1型兵は高性能と引き換えに特性が偏ってしまった機体です。94式であればまだ。
So it is the Mark 94 Shiranui, but it's the 1C model. What was the model that we were typically like seeing referenced? I think it was the 2E maybe? I don't know.
1型兵を自在に操る者も多くいる。能力を引き出せないのは私の問題だ。
So what's interesting to me is like, so she has access to Takuma Kazuchi. It sounds like she would be related to the Royal Guard in some way. But it maybe like, I don't know. I'm getting the impression she's not working with the Royal Guard. Maybe this is like, maybe it is though. Because like they're both in the armor that I associate with Takuma Kazuchi's, but I don't know. I don't get that feeling.
高村注意。
結局、部隊は私がかけた右翼が総崩れになり、前衛と後衛が分断され全滅した。私があと数分でも持ちこたえていれば、おそらく半数は生還できたはず。
Alright. Got a bit of a messiah complex going here. You're right, but it also, like, you can't make everything your fault.
不覚だ。部下を戒めておきながら、99型の威力に浮かれ、スリーパードリフトを全く警戒しなかった。
Yeah, that is on you. You never can trust the walls there. You should just, I honestly, as soon as things seem to be going your way, you need half your team just pointing at the walls and ceiling and just ready to open fire as soon as they fall, because they will.
スリーパードリフトの警戒は初歩の初歩。いかにシミュレーターとはいえ、口惜しい。
仮に警戒していたとしても、中隊規模の突入。しかもあの状況では 100% 発見は不可能です。周囲にそれができるなら、帝国はとうの昔に佐渡島を取り返していますよ。
Sadogashima. Okay, so Sadogashima is an island off Japan that was captured by the beta. It was the first mainland part of Japan to fall to the beta, and they have a hive there, which is a big tower and where they generate and make new beta and everything. The next one was Yokohama, which obviously is very much Tokyo-esque area, but that one was recaptured by a human. So mainland Japan is now technically free of beta, except for Sadogashima, which is like prime directive like territory.
雨宮。
Anxiety must be written all over my face, given how far Amamiya is going to console me again. I really am a sorry excuse for a commanding officer.
上官をバカにするな。
失礼しました。
I like Amamiya. Yeah, look at that. She's even wearing, like, the Beauregard uniform. The Type 99 railgun has a long road ahead before reaching mass production, but once it gets there, without a doubt, the entire world will undergo a revolution in military affairs. It's hard to believe a mere prototype can display the kind of performance. If a simulation-only device is that powerful, I shudder to think with a real railgun's capabilities. In all honesty, when I first looked over its insane specifications and resource demands, it wasn't entirely convinced that the device could even exist. But after bearing witness to its sheer power, even if it was within the context of a simulation, I'm hard-pressed to deny its revolutionary potential in terms of anti-beta warfare. Yeah, tell me about it. Still, it'll only happen when we've managed to solve the fundamental operational problems. It's funny, though, because, like, it is a powerful bit of tech, for sure. But, like, we know in the alternative timeline that Yuko-sensei, working with the UN, puts whatever that thing can do to shame with the Susanos. Like, they're freaking nuts. But I guess at the same time, they are kind of super weapons that can only truly operate with, like, technology that doesn't actually exist yet. So maybe this is a bit more of a practical take on her designs.
戦術機が初めて世に出た時も、このような思いを抱いた者は多かったのでしょうね。
True, but that's the thing. It's like before TSS, we had no chance. TSS gave us a chance. This railgun gives us a better chance. That the railgun has the potential to affect an even greater paradigm shift than TSF did. TSFs are the product of hard-won over decades of trial and error in real combat operations. Conversely, the railgun can be immediately outfitted onto turrets, vehicles, and warships. We can treat it the same as conventional artillery and still wring out its full potential. A weapon that can neutralize an entire battlefield with no risk of collateral damage? The power of the gods under our complete control.
あのようなものとは根本的に異なるものだ。だが、この因縁めいた不調は何だ?
The railgun is a product of Yokohama, a monument to the humiliation we have suffered, a foreign boil festering within the middle of Japan. Okay, yeah, so I'm guessing Yuko does have some influence over this project of some kind. Oh, you know what it might be? It might be that because she needs time. That's the whole idea of, like, Alternative 4, and her plan for Alternative 4 is she was struggling to get to, like, that last puzzle piece that she needed. Maybe to try and fend off her detractors who were trying to shuffle her aside and engage in Alternative 5, which we know turned out so well if it were enacted. Maybe she gave them the railgun as a offering. Can be like, hey, look, this is a piece of what I've been making, but I think this one's functional enough to start testing, like, as like a way to kind of stall for, like, the true magnitude of what she was designing, which was the Susano. But yeah, that could make sense. Anyway, in the time of Operation Lucifer, the largest counteroffensive ever launched in the Far East, the United States dropped an experimental new bomb in Yokohama without due notice to the Empire. Oh, I knew they dropped G-bombs on Yokohama. I didn't realize they didn't consult Japan. They just kind of did it. Oh, I bet you that was a very popular decision. We paid a hefty price in blood and treasure, but humanity was able to bring down a hive for the first time in history, leading to the recapture of Honshu, the largest of the 5 main islands of Japan. In the days that followed, the UN forces assumed jurisdiction over the ruins of the Yokohama hive, a state of affairs that continues until the present. Other than the atrocity committed by the United States, again, sorry, Yokohama remains shrouded in secrecy to this day. But that by itself presents a critical issue, one that cannot be easily set aside. The data from the trial run is anything to go by. This device requires a dedicated nuclear reactor to keep up with the ridiculous power requirements. Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, I'm surprised a nuclear reactor can keep up with that. A lot of nuclear reactors are slow burns, like fission reactors especially, like the whole idea is that they just generate consistent heat over long periods of time, and then we use that heat to generate electricity. So to have a short-term reactor, like essentially like something you could strap onto your back, you need to have a very, I would call it a hot box. Like it's something that generates a lot of like radiation in a very concise place that can be used to be effective, like not effective, effective energy maybe, but not efficient energy. So it would have a lot of heat and a lot of radiation of like the destructive type, not just heat radiation, but like radiation. Like I don't understand how you could really have that deployable in battle without taking such enormous risks that it might not seem worth it. But again, we're talking about imminent human destruction. Might throw a lot of the normal safety checks we would consider way too risky out the window. Because I mean, sure, what's the choice? You either like would you rather just die overwhelmed by a beta, or die of cancer in your 60s but potentially in a free world? I think we'd all take the cancer, which is crazy to admit, but like, you know, between that or being eaten, like I think we'd all agree that like it'd be worth to take the risk if you think it's going to have a payoff that will actually work. Except the chief engineer is to be believed, there isn't anything remotely resembling a reactor attached to the prototype under assembly. Huh. So just where is that power coming from then? Yokohama holds the key to that mystery. Okay. Well, that's obviously likely to be involved with G material, which is something to probably talk about, but essentially it's like matter that does not follow any of the rules that we understand that the beta have some way of creating. They manufacture this artificial matter that can affect gravity and just kind of breaks physics that we understand. It kind of lets us break the rules. It's why the G bombs that took out like that hive were like, nuclear bombs don't take out hives very effectively. The G bomb did. That just kind of shows the power scale we're talking about here. Yokohama Base, aka the headquarters of the United Nations 11th Force in the Pacific Theater. The largest United Nations base in the Far East and its beacon of hope for all mankind, Yokohama is the first ever military base built atop the remains of a beta hive. Rumor about Yokohama have been constant of everyday life throughout my tenure in the Development Corps. And while Yokohama is spoken about in reserved tones, not a single one of those rumors has been a positive nature. To speak of Yokohama is to speak of the dark. It's a little wonder, then, that the place where the technology built behind a weapon like a railgun comes from this headquarters of a questionable secret project.
城代省は、いや、帝国国防省は、一体何を考えているんだ?
They're thinking about, not dying? Yokohama is Japanese in name only, and a practical matter, it's an enclave of the United Nations in the middle of Japan. We must never again depend on the whims of a foreign power for weapons that could determine the fate of the empire. The pursuit of self-reliance is what we're devoting so many resources toward improving the Shiranui, and the development of power source in the railgun is a pressing matter as well, one that must be dealt with domestically. Oh, okay. So she's caught up in the idea that, like, relying on even the UN is seen as a slight, because again, the UN is substantially backed by America, who were the ones that bombed the crap out of Japan without even asking first. And so, like, the precedent being, we can't just keep trusting foreign powers who don't have our best interests at heart to make the changes that are going to make the most impact on our people. However, even if we solve the energy problem by ourselves, the other issues remain. Take ammunition, for example. One of the railgun's selling points is that it can fire 120mm shells at a rate of 800 rounds per minute. It's a double-edged sword, though, since it requires external supplies containers filled with nothing but 120mm shells to fully utilize the optimum fire rate. Yeah, like I said, that thing can fire like these 120mm shells practically on top of each other. So like that fire rate is nothing to shake a stick at. The weapon demands a secure logistics route, and even assuming one is present, tactical rockets and field artillery are vastly superior in land-based combat operations. Right now, the railgun only shines in hive capture operations.
1998年7月、北九州から上陸したベータは、瞬く間に九州地方、中国、四国へと進行。実に数千万人がこの1週間で落命しました。
This looks like a past thing.
ベ ベータは首都京都に迫り、帝国軍、在日米軍、国連軍は三軍共同の防衛線を構築し、迎え撃つも敗走。7月31日、ついに京都市街が戦場と化してしまいました。
The fall of Kyoto. I remember reading about this thing a little bit. She looks like younger right now.
三軍必死の抵抗も虚しく、ベータに蹂躙される1200年の都。この日、帝都鎮守の琵琶湖艦隊による全力砲撃により、ベータの第一波はかろうじて退けられました。壊滅した京都駅から救出された、地獄から生還した奇跡の少女兵士、帝国近衛軍の高村由衣中尉に当時のお話を聞きました。
Takamura Yui. So that was her. So she, of the Royal Guard, was rescued from the invasion.
当時近衛軍英士養成学校に通っていた私は戦時特例法により繰り上げ任官し、同期生と共に82式戦術歩行戦闘機随閣に搭乗。実戦経験のない私たちは嵐山仮設補給基地の死守を命じられました。最前線に出られない悔しさはありましたが、任務に精励しようと努めました。
So yeah, they were sidelined, but when you're in a losing situation, sideline quickly becomes...
ですが、前線部隊の壊滅により、ベータの進行を食い止めることができず、嵐山は陥落。同期生たちは次々にレーザー級の餌食となり、恩師である帝国陸軍真田幸三大尉の命令に従い、生き残った数名で京都駅に向かいました。京都駅は臨時の物資集積基地だったのです。私と戦友が友軍との合流を期待して向かった先、そこはまさに地獄でした。
Oh no. So it was a rendezvous point, but it got overwhelmed while they were making their way there.
京都駅はすでにベータの巣窟と化しており、能登泉少尉はソルジャー級ベータの餌食となりました。
Oh, soldier class. Those are the smallest ones. But that means it was personal. And that's the thing. Like, the beta eat what they find. Machine or man. They eat it all. Like, they eat metal. Like, they actually devour metal and, like, process it into other things, you know, obviously. But, like, they consume it. And, like, they don't stop at metal. They go for flesh. And the soldier class are the ones that are dedicated to taking out people.
山城上総少尉はかろうじて機内で生存していましたが、無数のタンク級に包囲されており、機体ごと捕食されるのは時間の問題でした。
Tank class are the red ones, and they're called tank class because they're the size of tanks.
バイタルデータによれば、四肢を骨折し、自決すらできない状態だったようです。
Yep, so she had to wait inside the shell, watching as they slowly ripped their way toward her.
お願い撃って！早く撃ってよ！こいつらに食われる前に！
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Crap.
「結局私は山城少尉を解釈できなかった。手の震えが止まらず、ただ引き金を引き続けることしかできませんでした。
Did you miss?
おそらく山城少尉は絶望と苦痛にまみれて絶命したのだと思います。
Could you imagine? You try to grant your friend like a quick death rather than being slowly ripped to pieces, but you miss.
私にもっと育児があったなら、私がもっと強かったなら、なぜ私だけが生き残ってしまったのか。自責の念と絶望に苛まれました。私は
1ヶ月の消耗戦の末、京都は陥落しました。ベータは闘神を続け、関東より西は瞬く間に占領され、3500万人を超える人々が犠牲となったのです。
Yeah, that's how the beta work. Once they make landfall, if they're not stopped, it's over. Didn't even take a few days. 35 million. Could you imagine? 35. Just gone. And like, we're talking about a world that like equates to like modern day. Like this all takes place usually like in the early thousands, like 2006 usually is kind of like the center point of these stories. Like around that time in our world, we had about 6.5 billion people. At that time in this world, there are a total of 1 billion left. There were about 5 billion estimated casualties since the beginning of the beta invasion in the 60s. Could you imagine?
犠牲となった方々の中には、高村中尉など足元にも及ばないほど悲惨な経験をされた方も多いでしょう。
Why would you be even broadcasting this story?
ベータの暴力に対し、なすすべもなく倒れた方々に比べ、少なくとも高村中尉には抗う力を与えられていました。
It almost feels like an anti-government angle they're going for here.
ところが当時の高村中尉には、それをあえなす技量と意志が決定的に欠如していました。そんなことにも気づかず、現実に絶望し、生きる意味すらも失いかけていたのです。
Yeah, calm down, dude. She was like a child.
そんな私を救ってくれたのは、死と絶望に支配された救護キャンプで産声を上げた新たな命。そして高村の仮面。父や母との絆でした。私が生を放棄することは、生まれたばかりの小さな命を見捨てるに等しい。それは高村家に列する者が取り得ない選択です。そして理解しました。末後の名誉を私に託した戦友の思いに応えられなかったことこそ、高村の名を汚す行いであると。私は己の不誠実と未熟を恥じ、その事実を全て受け止め、滅びを拒絶し、自らを鍛え直すと心に決めました。勝負の急に際し、自らの手を汚すことを厭わない強靭な覚悟。高村家の次期当主にふさわしいものとなるために。
不退転の決意を胸に再び立ち上がった高村中尉ですが、現実は容赦なくその決意を踏みにじります。
Seriously, this news anchor. Screw you and whoever wrote this piece.
1999年8月5日、甲22号目標、いわゆる横浜配部制圧と本州奪還を目的とした日米国連大東亜連合4軍による大規模反攻明星作戦が発動されました。
Objective 22 Operation Lucifer.
太平洋と日本海に展開した大艦隊の交差砲撃に始まったこの作戦は、人類史上最大のパレオロゴス作戦に次ぐ規模の兵力を投入。8月5日未明、連合軍は最大目標である横浜配部の攻略を開始しました。
反攻作戦の噂を聞いて以降、私は胸にたぎる闘志を抑えるのに必死でした。そして鍛錬の証を亡き戦友と父母に示すその時を、一時先週の思いで待ち続けたのです。
So she saw the fall of Japan firsthand, barely survived, and apparently was shamed for it, despite the fact that there's no shame in freaking out when you're in the midst of a hell like that. And now she goes to the second operation, and she's going to survive it, obviously. But it's again one of those things where, like, because of the actions of the United States, it's looked down upon. And I wonder if people are going to call her out for what, not dying in the line of duty with everyone else?
ですが私の部隊は、甲22号目標攻略の主力ではなく、新帝都防衛を担う玉川絶対防衛線。つまり、後方に配置されたのです。
Okay, so she was stuck in a place that was relatively safe again. This time when she was older, so maybe there's a nepotism involved there, because remember, she's technically part of a royal family, so maybe that was on purpose.
皇帝陛下がおわし、
将軍殿下が陣を構える新帝都の守護は近衛の本部ですが、私は内心ひどく落胆しました。
It is interesting hearing like the staticky, like old CRT, like old recording style of this sequence. It's really cool.
武家にあるまじき思いとは知りながら、目と鼻の先で行われている戦闘を指をくわえて見ているしかない己の運命を嘆き呪いました。
連合軍は数回にわたるベータの大規模増援にかろうじて持ちこたえるも、高22号攻略は膠着状態に陥ります。
Right. And that's when the United States decides to pull the rabbit out of their butt and say like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to take it like through traditional means. Let's make sure we win.
そして翌6日8時15分40秒。
やめろ。
She watched it. Yeah, look at that. They're trying to shoot it down. USS PSCOM and all units deployed around Hive 22 evacuate immediately. I repeat, evacuate immediately. We have decided to use a new anti-hive weapon. Evacuate immediately from the effective range expected shown on data link. This is USS PAC. So USS PACECOM. All units deployed.
アメリカ軍が事前協議なく持ち込み、独断で投下した2発の新型爆弾は、高22号目標のモニュメントだけでなく、横浜市街を含む半径数百メートルの範囲を球状に削り去ったのです。
Yeah, it's like just keep in mind this thing puts nukes to shame.
許しがたきアメリカの非道。時の合衆国大統領ビルク・リンドンは日本や国連の抗議に対し戦勝会見で次のように述べています。
Interesting that even the UN was like, "What the fetch was that?"
新型爆弾の投下によって人類は数十万の将兵、そして数千万の日本国民の生命が失われずに済んだ。経緯は遺憾だが緊急状況ゆえにやむを得なかったと。
I see what you're doing there, writer. That's like nearly word for word what FDR, president who okayed the detonation of the two nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, civilian targets, said. That was the same excuse that he gave. Yeah, I see what you're doing here.
新型爆弾、いわゆる G 弾の投下は、今も帝国国民の心に深い傷跡となって刻み込まれています。ですが、その炸裂直後から西日本のベータが一斉に後退を始めたのも事実。それによって日本は本州だけでなく四国、九州、対馬まで一気に奪回できたのです。
Yeah. It would be hard to be super upset when that happens.
そしてその結果、ベータをユーラシアに封じ込めるという世界防衛戦略が完成し、日本を含めた全世界に一時的な安寧がもたらされたのもまた事実です。G 弾の使用によって利を得たのは誰なのか。日本か、アメリカか、国連なのか。それとも。
Yeah, whoever this news anchor is, like they're feeding a conspiracy. This is like, was this a Fox News? Get grief. Like shaming survivors.
とても興味深いある手紙をご紹介したいと思います。
Shaming survivors and feeding conspiracies, huh?
最愛の我が娘、ユイ。急の折、甚だ簡素ではあるが、一所したためる。
Okay, and they're reading a letter from like, I presume like her dad? On a news report?
気球存亡の時至り、再び戦場に立つ機会を得られしこと。この絵に名を連ねたる身として、妨害の喜びなり。帝神報告は部門の誉れ。天地神明に誓い、父は異星紀元首どもを撃退し、瑞穂の地に、再び安寧を取り戻さんとす。我に不足ありて戻らち時は、御身に高村家の一切を委ねる。その手続きは、顧問の山岡先生とよく相談すべし。御身は必ずや生還し、帝国再建の一助として、 税金せしめんこと。戦時多忙の身にして、妻子を幸福にあらしめる機会少なしことは、我が生涯の心残りなり。御身は、父の分まで母に孝養を尽くされるべし。これ、我切なる願いなり。
戦国の世から武具のこしらえに長じ、帝都城三大をも許された名門でありながら、秋分にいとまがない高村家。
Who are these people?
先代は74式近接戦闘小刀、82式戦術歩行戦闘機をはじめ、数多くの国産兵装の設計開発を手掛け、ベータ進行により莫大な富を得たとの噂もあります。
Wait, so they designed like the emergency combat weapon and the mainstay like bladed sword that's now like considered one of the best and like well like distributed for close quarters combat, which is seen as critical combat with beta. And they're gonna say, oh, because they got a lot of wealth for designing these blades that are like critical for all our troops, they obviously are notorious and just like piggybacking off of others.
だから目を言うな。父様は税格が多くの絵師を守れなかったと最後まで。
そして現当主である高村由中尉は、皮肉にもその座をベータの日本侵攻と明星作戦によってやすやすと手に入れ、家業ともいえる兵器開発に勤しんでいます。
違う。父様と私は決してそのような。
Yeah. How is this new story allowed? Like, I understand like free press is important and all, but we're living in like a permanent martial law state, and feeding this anti like royal guard stuff seems like something that would be stopped. But again, maybe not, because freedom is still something they wanted to respect. So gonna have to deal with that. But still, good grief.
私は前線への配置転換を何度も希望しているのに。
G 弾の使用によって利を得たのは誰なのか。
やめろ。
Oh, the expose saying if they're in weapons development and this G-bomb was used and a family that designs weapons that gets to avoid the front lines at every turn and manages to survive, like, seems like they get to have some preferential treatment.
ベータの進行で利を得たのは誰なのか。
やめろ。
日本か、アメリカか、それとも。
Jeez.
やめてくれ。
Yeah, I'm with you, Yuuya. That's freaking brutal. That was not fair at all.
またか。何度見ても慣れないものだな。
Can't believe.
情けない。執務中にうたた寝してしまうとは。それにしても。
そんな私を救ってくれたのは、死と絶望に支配された救護キャンプで産声を上げた新たな命。そして高村の仮面。父や母との絆でした。私が生を放棄することは、生まれたばかりの小さな命を見捨てるに等しい。それは、高村家に列する者が取り得ない選択です。そして理解しました。末後の名誉を私に託した戦友の思いに応えられなかったことこそ、高村の名を汚す行いであると。
夢とはいえ、よくもあのような綺麗事を並べ立てたものだ。世俗の風聞に釈明をしたいとでも。
No, but it doesn't mean it doesn't eat away at you.
意をかざすべからず、黙してなすのみをもって、そう示すなり。私が何をなすべきか、あの日心に刻みつけたのに、私はまだ何もなすことができていない。罰が当たったということか。
No, no one deserves that. No one. February 2nd, 2001. Okay, yeah. So this is like 5 years. Third Underground Hangar, TSF Technology Development Institute.
やはり機体の動作終点に違和感がある。どうも私の予想よりずれてしまっているようなのだが。
There's my beauty right there, the Takama Kazuchi. Alright. I'm guessing there's gonna be like a more, like I'm probably really close to like a big like introduction type of sequence or whatever, but I feel like this is a really good place to stop. There's a lot to digest there. I wonder if we're gonna explore a lot more, because I remember the story that she told is what is depicted in the anime, but it's been long enough that I only remember the vaguest of details, namely the fact that they weren't supposed to be at the front line, then the front line caught up with them, and then the very graphic memory of that friend of hers she talked about. It's brutal, but worth watching. Now, I wonder if we're going to see more detail about that in the visual novel, because the anime certainly went into detail. And this was definitely doing a lot more of like impressions and like kind of like trauma rather than like actually like reminiscing about it. So we'll have to see if that displays more. But that's where we're going to be ending things for today. Thank you so much for joining me for the first in another great series in Muv-Luv. Keep in mind, I have made promises. When I'm done playing like all the Muv-Luv content I can, I'm going to be jumping into another really long but much beloved series, the Higurashi and Numeneko series. Like, they're long and like it's going to be probably a few years in the running kind of series, but it'll kind of be something that steps up in the Muv-Luv like Monday slot. So even if this isn't your exact cup of tea, or if you're like into this and you're like, well, what else is coming, just keep in mind Higurashi and Numeneko are on the horizon probably as soon as we're done with this. The only reason I might not is because they're so long. I'm hesitant to jump into them until I'm like ready to go like all the way. And so if Muv-Luv keeps publishing new stuff, I keep jumping into them. Because like the day after, I figured once the day after was done, we'd jump into Higurashi and Numeneko, but then this came out. So it's like, well, maybe we should do this. And then when I polled like the patrons, they were like, yeah, let's just go ahead and do this. So we're jumping into this one. And thank you, by the way, to the patrons. Again, like, I've been running this channel, obviously, because it's a passion of mine. The Patreon was something I launched to this idea of like, hey, look, I'd love to be able to do this like full time, like full term. And I'd had people express to me the desire to support me or know how to. And so I said, look, here's a Patreon. Do with it what you will. The only difference between the content really is that there's a like podcast I do. It's supposed to be monthly. It's been tough lately, but it's supposed to be monthly. That patrons get access to, where I just do behind the scenes Q&A stuff. Other than that, it's pretty much just like, hey, if you want to support the channel directly, it's there. And thank you so much to those wonderful patrons who are making it so that this content is possible for me. You've made it so that I can do more content more frequently, that have better access, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you so much. And thank you to anyone who's watching this, frankly, like from the get-go. Anybody who's willing to watch these games with me, to enjoy these stories with me, to be able to engage and talk about like the characters and the world building and just like the life-changing nature of these stories. Like, you're the backbone of everything I do. Back when I first started, when I had maybe 5 views of video, to now, like, it's always been about you and sharing this content with you, because I've always wanted to be able to share these stories with people, and there was no one in my life to talk to about it. So thank you for being there for me in this regard. And I'm really excited to continue to share these journeys with you all. So thank you so much. I hope you're excited, because I'm excited. This was a powerful first episode, and yeah, I'm really interested to see what we get into here and like kind of what the story ends up breaking into from this point. And Yuuya looks like a really interesting and very like dynamic character. So it's interesting to see kind of like what her like story is going to evolve into, and maybe the characters around her, and seeing like kind of like her place in this alternative universe and like how it all fits into Yokohama that we know from the core series. Anyway, thank you so much for your time here. Thank you so much for being a part of the channel. You are all amazing, and I'm really grateful to have each and every one of you here spending your time with me, and I hope you continue to do so. So until the next video watching me, if you see me next, I'll see you there.